Welcome to The Explainer. The story of Noah's Ark is probably one of the most famous tales in all of history. But what if the version we all know is missing the most important part, the classified part? You see, for almost 50 years, the Central Intelligence Agency, yeah, that CIA, kept a top-secret file called Noah's Ark. And the reason they kept it a secret? Well, it changes everything we thought we knew about the Great Flood. Okay, let's get into it. So our story doesn't begin way back in ancient times. Nope, it starts smack in the middle of the Cold War, with a U.S. spy plane flying high over the mountains of Turkey. So back in 1949, a spy plane mission snapped a photo of this really strange barge-like object way up on Mount Ararat. The CIA saw it and bam, they immediately called it the Ararat Anomaly, slapped a top-secret classification on it, and then just denied it even existed for the next half-century. So you gotta ask, right? Why classify a potential biblical artifact for 50 years? I mean, the official story is that they were protecting their spy plane tech. Okay, fair enough. But when you start digging into some very specific ancient texts, you get the feeling there might be another reason, a much bigger reason they were so interested in whatever was sitting on top of that mountain. And the key to unlocking this whole thing? Well, it might just be hidden in a book that was intentionally stripped from the Bible centuries ago. I'm talking about the Book of Enoch, which was supposedly written by Noah's own great-grandfather. You know the story from Genesis, right? God gets angry with sinful people and sends a flood. It's a story of moral punishment. But the Book of Enoch, which is way older, tells a completely different and, frankly, wilder story. We're talking about genetic warfare, about celestial beings messing with human DNA, and a flood that was basically a planetary reset. And for the longest time, people just dismissed this book as a fake, some kind of ancient fan fiction. But then, 1947 happened. 11 complete copies were found with the Dead Sea Scrolls. And guess what? They were a perfect match for the texts they had from Ethiopia. Suddenly, this fake book was proven to be incredibly ancient and authentic. And this is where things get really wild, and it's the heart of the whole controversy. See, when Enoch describes heaven, he's not talking about clouds and harps. Not at all. He describes a physical, technological place that he was physically taken to. He talks about a mothership in orbit, with walls made of crystal, blinking lights, and a lofty roof where he could look down and see the whole cosmos. So according to Enoch's account, the Great Flood wasn't about punishing humanity for just being, sinful. Nope. It was a direct response to a very specific, catastrophic crime. A crime committed by a group of beings who came from the sky. The book lays out this really clear and honestly terrifying sequence of events. First, a group of 200 angels, known as the Watchers, come down to Earth just to observe us. But they go rogue. They start teaching humanity forbidden knowledge, things like making weapons and sorcery, and then they start interbreeding with humans, creating this race of violent, hybrid giants called the Nephilim. And just like that, the real reason for the flood becomes terrifyingly clear. It wasn't about punishing people for misbehaving. It was a desperate, last-ditch effort to basically wipe the planet's corrupted hard drive, to try and save what little was left of the original human genome. Okay, so you might be thinking, wasn't this just some local legend from the Middle East? Well, the evidence suggests something else entirely. It points to a global event, something so traumatic that it was burned into the collective memory of cultures all across the planet. Seriously, think about this for a second. We're talking over 250 different cultures. Many of them had absolutely no contact with each other. We're talking cultures separated by oceans and continents, and yet they all have a strikingly similar memory of a world-ending flood. You can look anywhere: the Epic of Gilgamesh in Sumeria, the Incan myths of Viracocha, the story of Tiddalik the Frog from Australian Aboriginals. The details change, but the core elements, they're always the same. There's a divine warning, some kind of vessel for survival, and then a tiny group of survivors repopulating the entire Earth. So, all of this brings us to the big question, right? The whole point of this explainer. Are we looking at a bunch of unrelated myths, a divine miracle, or could we be looking at the historical record of a technological event? To figure that out, we have to look at the physical evidence.
All right, so decades after that first spy plane photo, this other site was found, the Durapanar site. And it's this massive, undeniably boat-shaped formation. Now here is where it gets really, really interesting. People measured it, and its length didn't match the 300 cubits from the Bible if you used the standard cubit. But if you use the older, more ancient Egyptian royal cubit, which is exactly the measurement Noah would have used back then, it's a perfect match.
Okay, but let's be intellectually honest here. It is absolutely crucial to look at this stuff with a balanced perspective. For every single piece of tantalizing evidence, like a perfect boat shape or an old text, there's a pretty strong science-based counterargument that we just have to consider. And this is a really crucial point, because while the site itself is super compelling, the most extraordinary physical claims, like finding man-made metal rivets inside this formation, all come from one researcher, Ron Wyatt. And his credibility, well, it's been seriously and repeatedly challenged by the mainstream archaeological community. So after all that, what are you supposed to take away from this? Well, it's not about any single piece of evidence. It's about the pattern. You've got this universal flood story found everywhere. You have ancient scriptures that read more like technical manuals than religious texts. You have the US government taking a serious, top-secret interest in it. And at the center of it all is this ancient fear of genetic hybridization that honestly feels weirdly relevant to our world today. And all of that leaves us with one final challenging question. I want you to really think about this. The Book of Enoch describes Noah's birth. It says he was born with skin as white as snow, with eyes that literally lit up the house like the sun, and that he spoke right after being born, which terrified his father, who thought he might be one of those hybrids. Now you tell me, does that sound like the description of a divine miracle, or does it sound more like a lab report?